What's up? What's up? What's up? What's going on? It's your boy Sazo. And here we have it, a common lie spread and debunked. Common lie that Trump is just all about the oil and it wasn't a mutual beneficial relationship between Venezuela and America um, for the benefit of oil, and how basically Hugo Chavez and Maduro basically messed up the relationship and just destroyed the whole oil industry. And this comes from an insider. So let's get into it. Let's take a look.
So this is the comment I keep seeing. Oil. They don't care about Maduro. They want the oil. Oil is the goal. It's all about oil. Oil, oil, oil. Okay, so let's talk about that. Venezuela has the largest oil reserves on Earth. Its reserves are 13% bigger than Saudi Arabia's. But not all oil is the same.
Hmm.
Saudi oil is light and easy to refine. Venezuelan oil is extremely heavy, thick, difficult to process.
That's actually a major difference between the Saudi Arabia, Middle East oil market and Venezuela, which is a significant difference when it comes to um, the process of actually making the oil that we use today.
And only certain refineries in the world can handle it. Oil was discovered in Venezuela in the 1920s, and the US was immediately involved. American oil companies literally built Venezuela's oil industry because the country didn't have the infrastructure or the technology to do so.
Wow, that's a significant piece of information that so many people who claim that America is strictly there for the oil leave out. They omit information, to fit their narrative.
At the time, Venezuela was a poor country with an agrarian economy. It was mostly coffee and cacao plantations. There were no petroleum engineers, no heavy machinery, zero knowledge on how to run a global oil industry. But by 1928, with lots of help from US oil companies, Venezuela was one of the world's top exporters. Overnight, Venezuela became one of the richest countries in the world.
Just a little bit of research will give you an insight or let you know what's going on with Venezuela. I've been following Venezuela since Trump's first term. I've seen very egregious things. Mainly, one of the things that really touched me was people actually walking down the street eating out of the back of garbage trucks, just like the garbage trucks we have in New York City. People was actually walking down the street and eating out of the garbage trucks. So that's very important.
During the 1970s, Arab states imposed an oil embargo on the United States because of its support of Israel. This led global oil prices to explode, soaring from $1.80 a barrel to over $11 a barrel, a 500% increase. That crisis shook the entire world economy. That is, except for Venezuela, which suddenly saw billions of dollars worth of oil revenue entering its state coffers.
Hmm.
And right after that, in 1975, Venezuela nationalized its oil industry and created PDVSA, Petróleos de Venezuela, or Venezuelan Petroleum.
Venezuelan petroleum. So I just wonder, like, at that time, Hugo Chavez, I think he was about to get in power or he was in power. And how much money did he actually profit? How much money did he put in his own pockets?
The state owned company that still exists today. But even after the nationalization of its oil industry, Venezuela still needed the US. Why? Because the US Gulf Coast has huge refineries built specifically for heavy crude, the type of oil that sits under Venezuela. And this arrangement benefited both sides. Venezuela, a country roughly the size of Texas, doesn't have anywhere near the refining infrastructure needed to process hundreds of thousands of barrels of heavy crude oil per day.
Mm.
Venezuela's own refineries can only handle a fraction of what the country extracts, so US refineries processed it. Venezuela got billions in revenue, and American companies profited from the refining operation.
So naturally, you would take that money if you was doing the right thing, you would take that money and reinvest it into the country's infrastructure, the economy, the people, entrepreneurship, even companies. You can incentivize companies to come and due to the fact that you have this excess amount of revenue coming into your country, you can incentivize countries to come and employ the people. But I don't think that's what necessarily happened.
Everyone had a reason to keep the partnership going. But without heavy crude, those US refineries struggle. They literally hunger for Venezuelan oil. Now, there's this big misconception that Hugo Chavez, the populist and self proclaimed socialist president of Venezuela, who died in 2013, took back the industry from the US private interests that controlled it. But that's simply not true. Chavez became hostile to the US politically, yes, but he still depended on the US market. Venezuelan oil continued flowing to American refineries, and Chavez took advantage of the largest oil boom in history.
You see, socialist mindset. The government wants to take over private and corporations and put them under their own power for their profit. That's the typical track record of socialist governments, communist governments. They want to control the means of production and basically hold businesses hostages for their own profit. Give me an example of a country that doesn't do that, who claims to be socialist. And we just recently elected a democratic socialist, Mamdani. But we're going to get into that later on.
Gaining access to billions of dollars in oil revenue. What Chavez did do was purge PDVSA, the state oil company. He fired thousands of expert workers and replaced them with loyalists. Corruption exploded, production collapsed, and the economy imploded. When Chavez died in 2013, he handpicked this man, Nicolás Maduro, as his successor. Maduro inherited a country that was collapsing economically and made it worse, much worse. By 2017, 76 out of 84 PDVSA plants were paralyzed.
Exactly. So Maduro, he actually got the blueprint from Hugo Chavez, and once he got the blueprint, he just wanted to stretch it even more. When it was at that point, he could have turned things around. I believe so, if he was really had the interest of the people or had the interest of the country, but yet he chose to profit and he chose to gain from corruption. Socialism, it's typical. It's typical of, we've seen this game run before. It's nothing new. It's happened all over the world. Plenty of examples of this type of, but this is actually a unique example because the oil situation in Venezuela was like no other. Biggest oil refinery, biggest oil reserves in the world, bigger than Saudi Arabia. And you see how Saudi Arabia does it. They're stupid rich, but their oil refinery, Venezuela's oil refinery, is 13%, like you said, 13% bigger than Saudi Arabia, but the whole country, area, neighboring countries are poor. So you have to put that into consideration.
Venezuela's oil production fell to 20% of its total capacity. Now, I can already hear you in the comments saying, that's because of sanctions. But no, not yet at least. Before 2019, US sanctions only targeted individual Venezuelan officials, human rights abusers, narco traffickers, and corrupt elites. Venezuela was still completely free to sell its oil to the United States. And it did. The first oil sanctions only came in 2019, under Trump's first presidency. He basically imposed an embargo on PDVSA, the Venezuelan state oil company. Ironically, this hurt US companies too, because they lost access to the heavy crude.
It makes sense, though. Of course, it would make sense to, put that type of sanction on a country where, the where we had a good relationship, where we was profiting on both ends. You actually turn from a democratic state to a socialist state, and the election happened and they elected to remove you from power, but yet you just you cooed it, you vetoed it, and you demanded power. So of course, a leader in the right mind would say, I ain't dealing with you because you don't know how to do good business and you treat your people wrong. And that's what Trump did, respectfully.
Their refineries are specifically built for. So why sanction PDVSA if American companies hated it? Well, because Maduro suspended elections and was consolidating a dictatorship in Venezuela. The sanctions weren't about oil, they were about politics. It was a move to support the political opposition in Venezuela, which had won an election that Nicolas Maduro refused to accept. So, where does that leave us right now? 6 years later, Maduro is completely broke and running out of options. They rely on drug trafficking and illicit activities to survive. Maduro.
Exactly, because your 100% oil business went down to 20%. So the money was growing dry. So why? What happened? You had to do whatever you had to do. You had to do the next best interest, which was corruption and moving that. Yeah, yo. Chichi, get the yeah, yo.
More than Trump, funnily enough, desperately wants the US companies to reestablish their operations in Venezuela. 2 weeks ago, Maduro even offered Trump all of Venezuela's resources,
Wow.
including all the oil, and also to reduce economic ties with China and Russia if Trump would just leave him alone. So if it was just about oil, Trump could have just accepted Maduro's offer, but he didn't. So no, it's not just about oil. Oil is just a piece of the story, but it's not the whole story. And you might be thinking, okay, Alex, but if it's not about oil, what is it about? Why is the US about to attack Venezuela? And if you did think that, thank you for asking, because I'll break that down in my next videos. Follow along if you want to understand what's really happening in Venezuela. And if you have any questions or thoughts about this, please feel free to leave them in the comments.
Thank you. And most definitely a lot of credit to this guy. And I will tag his information in the description. But he's definitely he's definitely, well informed. I think he's a lawyer and a historian, and from the Venezuela area. So it makes plenty sense why Trump would actually do what he did, and it's not about oil. Just to inform everybody, it's not just about oil. Of course, the oil relationship that America has with Venezuela is very profitable to our country, but is also profitable to Venezuela. And it is definitely about the people contributing from the natural resource that they have. So basically, all that nonsense that these people are spewing is nonsense. Doesn't make any sense. It doesn't equate to anything. And if you disagree, go ahead, research, do more research. You can like, comment, share, leave your personal opinions in the comments, and I'll see you soon. All right? Yeah.